Morphology, which is the study of words and the processes of how they are formed, is arguably the most important building block to understand a language. When engaging in morphology, the most useful way to do so is to consider the morpheme. So a morpheme is the smallest part of a word that is meaningful. They are often categorized into one of two categories: free morphemes and bound morphemes. Though just like with everything with a language, there are exceptions to that rule. Free morphemes are words that can stand on their own as their own words. Words like dog or gentle, free, are all free morphemes. These can sometimes also be called root words. Conversely, we have a bound morpheme. So I know what you're thinking. If a free morpheme is a word that can stand on its own and is its own word, then a bound morpheme must, therefore, be the opposite. This isn't entirely correct. The reason I say that is I have issue with one key phrase, which is the term word. A bound morpheme isn't necessarily a word. Word doesn't necessarily have an agreed upon definition that is correct in all cases. It is a little bit of a nebulous term. Bound morphemes generally are not words on their own. There are, of course, exceptions to this. Words like bio in biology kind of are accepted as their own words as well, but not all words. And in fact, the majority of bound morphemes are not words in and of themselves. From bound morphemes, we get another two categories: derivational and inflectional. But before we get there, we need to do affixes. An affix is, in essence, an addition to a root word. They come in three flavors: the ever-popular prefix with words like pre, anti, or un. Then we have suffixes, which come after a root word, with terms such as able, or li. Finally, we have infixes, but we don't really use them in English, so we do not worry about them. So we've settled on what an affix is, but what's the link between an affix and a bound morpheme? We need to go back to our flowchart from earlier and focus on inflectional affixes. Affixes that do not change the meaning of a word. So it's taking a word like book to books, run to running, fail to failed. The root word does not change meaning, but the additional morpheme adds some information or tense. On the other hand, we have derivational morphemes. A derivational morpheme creates or derives a new word with its presence. Essentially, if you add derivational morpheme to a word, it gets a dictionary entry. If you add an inflectional morpheme, it does not. Book and books mean the same thing. Run and runner does not. English possesses a large number of morphemes derived from a number of different languages. From the Germanic Anglo-Saxon tribes to the Latin-derived French, all the way through to the Greeks, a number of cultures have had a strong impact on the English language, and this is reflected through our morphemes, specifically our derivational ones. We're not going to talk about all of them here, we are only going to focus on a few. Unlike inflectional morphemes, which really only come in suffixes, derivational morphemes come in two varieties: prefixes and suffixes. 5 of the most common Anglo-Saxon prefixes that you will find are un, re, dis, in, and miss. Unrelated, but I recently rewatched Mad Max Fury Road, and it left me pretty disillusioned with the state of cinema today. There's been a myriad of incomprehensible films that have come out in the last decade, and I feel like my tastes and the tastes of modern cinema have really become misaligned. Anglo-Saxon suffixes insert themselves wonderfully into the words we speak, though I suspect if I continue doing this joke, you might feel some resentment. Morphemes like full, hood, or meant are amongst the most common that you can expect to find in English. These adjust root words into new words, like the aforementioned run into runner. Other examples include enjoy into enjoyment, joy into joyful, joy into joyless, or child into childhood. Each of these words, with the inclusion of a derivational morpheme, become new words. They change from what they were into something new, representing a new idea. So essentially, that's what a morpheme is: the smallest meaningful portion of a word that comes from a variety of languages and can sometimes, but not always, change the meaning of a word. Don't like that ending.